Hello everyone, just getting ready for tonight's live stream. I might have to cut it a bit short, but we'll go as long as we can. What I want to speak about is, or can be titled, The Creative Expansion of Man's Mind. Okay, there we go. Here's the notion. So, we are in a universe of 1 billion trillion stars, and we are even limited to just the visible universe in regards to our senses of sight. I'm one person, one creature on a planet among billions of creatures, but I have seen a certain way of reality, and I have a certain unique relationship with creativity. And I'm going to kind of share like my approach towards it, and how an infusion of imagination, memory, and a natural rhythm, which involves intuitive allowance in some sense, can create an atmosphere where ideas are not given to you in just an ordered fashion. Some people live such ordered lives, you ask them, are you creative? They're like, no, I'm just perfect at a routine I do every day. And that's respectable, because it requires a certain creative mind to be able to maintain a routine at a high level of pressure. Do you see? So there's a certain range of creativity one can say there, but the creativity I learned was out of a certain chaos. It was out of a certain chaotic experience of the destruction of a sense of self. And so whenever that happens, you're left at a point where you see, oh my God, the person is in a universe of such change that to hold on to an idea as the only truth will in some sense feel like meaningless. You see, so in the vastness and the expansion of how far time has come, we are beginning to kind of notice that we are temporary creatures with eternal visions. Some of these eternal visions have been communicated through stories, and so they have become religions. Then they have become philosophies. Then they have become some sort of scientific confusion. Then they have become the denial of science, of any confusion, you know. And then it goes on into this hierarchy and pattern, as if, there was this ancient poet named Hafiz, the Sufi mystic poet, and I don't remember the full poem, but I remember him. He had this concept, this part of his quote, where this dude from like, I don't know, 700 years ago, this ancient Sufi mystic poet, he said, "This world is a madhouse." And I remember being young and reading this, kind of like getting this concept, and I was like, wow, the wisest person is saying this world is filled with insane people. But when I remember reading the full poem, it put it in a deeper context and the feeling changed. But the whole idea and implication was that every living being is so different that in some sense the only thing we seem to have in common is our opportunity to be alive in the same moment. Do you see? So when life is taken for granted, or what I like to say, misstorified, your values become based on an abstract world. They become based on thought. And this is why in some sense, it is a sad tale that when age meets us in our final hour, some aspects of our memory have already let go. For me, this Sufi mystic poet Hafiz also has this saying from that ancient tradition where he says, "Die before you die." And this concept was very like revolutionary in my mind when I heard it, because what it meant is that you gotta like kind of want success, at the same time be detached from the idea, and in some sense live life as a playful rhythm rather than some sort of like a chaotic conquering of your daily tasks, for me it's not about intensity as much as it is about vision, because vision sees everything. That means like the eagle has the same vision when it's on the branches compared to when it's flying above the whole forest. you know Birds in some sense are like the enlightened beings of, in some sense, ground bound creatures. They in some sense fly away into the sky. Sometimes, like some pigeons nowadays, they've become very bold, and they like crosswalks, and they don't care if people walk beside them. But I'm saying typically animals, they change their space. So it seems that it's a natural evolutionary thing that when we find ourselves comfortable, we change our space. But this can create a sort of confusion, in the sense that the response needed for our current society is one of a better, more efficient story of humanity. Do you see? It's as if, like, when we look at history, you know what you see? What I see? I see train wrecks. I see shit. I see like so many Titanics in history. That means so many stories that they included greatness, but greatness had a certain struggle. Do you see? So, one can say, in some sense, we don't decide things just based on our thoughts. We base some of our decisions based on our emotions. But what are our emotions? We can't like corner emotions, but we can say that, I mean, some people have tried to say like an emotion is in a certain part of your body. So when you release the pressure, then the emotion goes away. But I think it's more complex than that. I think that the emotion, one can, in some sense, in a philosophical macro view, say that how would I say this? There has to be a knowledge of a shape to the world for your emotions to occur. Emotions are like water being poured into a cup. The cup already has its cylindrical shape and a certain design to its container. So emotions, we say like a person is feeling sad. So we ascribe, the way we're categorizing emotions is based on individuality. And when we say who is feeling these emotions of depression, sadness, and other sorts of chaotic emotions, one Mr. Within would say that an emotion is a revelation of how you feel you're living compared to your authentic vision for the world. I realize society is very interesting because not a lot of people are criminal, but the environment can make them. And when you create a system based on money, it's not that it's wrong. It's, of course, like our best idea yet, but in some sense it leads people to having to survive based on cruelty. So in some sense, think of it this way: man's, like the ancient Greeks had a quote, which was phenomenal. They would say, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. So the ancient Greeks, and it wasn't just ancient Greeks, it was many ancient traditions and cultures. So many people on the planet, their ancestors are shouting at them, and they're shouting at them and saying, did you not understand what we are living for? We are living for the only planet habitable in this universal sector, the only planet where minds open their eyes for the first time and creativity is shouted out as life is taking place for them, and designing them and sculpting them, and how words will, in some sense, run out of their vision into the worlds of men. Do you see what I'm saying is that back in the day there were physical kingdoms and physical wars, physical armies. Now we require mental kingdoms. It's like the realms of mental kingdoms hasn't gone. There's different kingdoms at war, but these kingdoms are ideas. They're ideas being taken so seriously that human beings are finding it difficult to communicate to one another. And whenever a society's communication is disturbed, it affects the evolution and the advancement of that civilization. I have personally had experiences where I would say it would have been, it was like, I would say if my imagination could leap light years ahead, it felt like that, So I kind of envisioned in some sense with that. Let me tell you what it is like. Most of life is based on yourself. The average human being just lives a total life thinking about him or herself. They think about like their individualization and the world and how they can be better in it. When they find themselves in different, what I like to call social systems, in different systems of society or just behavior, they require to adjust to a new sense of mode of being. So, in some sense, to be able to handle all the different challenges and tasks of the day means you got to be in all sorts of energy states, which means that your personality will be in all different states of forms if you want to shape a personality for yourself. I'll laugh, I can laugh now, but there was a time where I would get offended if I said to myself, like, how can I say it? Like, if I said, like, I thought I was a thought, and I felt like that was it, and the rest was unknown, and I couldn't see further. And this was such a blindfold that when it was taken off by nature's command, I began to see that if there is a gaze of an ultimate truth, in that gaze there is both chaos acknowledged and order acknowledged, and all men and all beings and all creatures and all living dimensionally active positions all begin to realize that it is the permission of one moment where all moments reside. And so for the human being, it leads to an internal biological sensory chamber. But for consciousness, it is boundless the moment you see that you are beyond bounds. And let me tell you why so many ancient traditions tell us that the soul is beyond space and time and energy. Any sort of physical existence. The ancient Vedas, they spoke of God as if like every person had a sort of God self, which was the ultimate God gazing upon them, within them as a field of attributeless presence. So for me, divinity, oh my God. For me, divinity is a remembrance how heavily karma has kept me from entering the next dimensions of my life. They ask this like, so like, some consider him as an enlightened person, Sadhguru. I have a certain respect for him based on certain things I've heard. But they asked him like, what is like the meaning of life, or something, some deep question. And he was like, a fulfilled life. Or they asked him, what's a fulfilled life? And he said a fulfilled life is a life where you're experiencing all the dimensions. You're fully experiencing this life. And that was a great answer. But for me, whenever, like, we got to consider that there is change is the god of temporary beliefs. That means our movement in time and space is causing there to be a witness within us that this witness feels because it is watching us move in time and space, it is not in time and space. So in many ancient cultures, they tried to pin down the source of consciousness, and they came into this conclusion that it was in the realm of unknown, because they had delved so far into the mystical journey that they had realized that all knowledge is kept underneath an ocean of the unknown. Do you see? So my efforts into comprehending truth has led me into the shock of the unknown. And so there was a moment where I had to, it's like some people say they're nihilists. For me, it was a second thing. For an instant second, I was nihilistic. Because for me, I saw with whatever amount of fullness I wanted in life, there would also be an emptiness that would continue it. I could make so many things, but then I would grow old and I would pass. And I would transition to a different state of intelligence. So for me, this is the curious thing, that it's as if our eyes have opened in a world that seems to have been here longer than we have. But at the same time, the way we receive this world is through our eyes, which in some sense is an unknown creation of the world for language to even be able to move in. And so for me, this is where I've had this dilemma, because some people are like, who's your audience, Mr. Within? And I said, I promote this to no one unless they ask me and I tell them. I have said not a single word to anybody about this channel. And the reason is very simple. Because it is for those who find it. You know, this is an ancient mystical marketing strategy. You don't chase the butterfly. You let the butterfly land on your shoulder, come to you. If need be, the universe will smile at you. It will open gates where before there was only pathways of endless destruction. There is savageness in the heart of man, but there's also savageness in the mind of man, and that savageness exists through different points of conceptual linearity, suddenly finding curved behavior. So in some sense, as long as there is people who aim to bring order, there's also people who will aim to bring chaos, because who learns best than their enemy? But the enemy is a conceptual landscape one is journeying in until they close their eyes for the day and then wake up in the morning again, as if we go into the mist and we come back. You know, this was actually something that made me really appreciate the concept of a mystic, because of how the idea came across. For example, right now I'm giving a live stream, but the battery for my laptop is low, so mid live stream I gotta like give life to my laptop. Oh, the different sounds we hear. So anyways, to continue, creativity is a sort of natural relationship of a sort of revelations of the unknown to your knowledge. So think of it as if, like, for all those people who say they don't feel creative, or creativity, like, it's valueless art, what's the point of art? I'll tell you this: the point of art is to preserve a certain dimension of intelligence, of mental pure freedom, where there is no artist who can create something original until they're honest and authentic. It is just the way it is intended, that if it is true art and true genius, it is witnessed effortlessly. Like, why do you think in so many contexts of literature and movies there's the eureka moment? What is that eureka moment? An instant where two worlds have found a bridge. But in that bridge, there is the clarity of a new way to live. So I see that in life is in some sense a performance of different, it's a performance of different intelligence. But the final conclusion is that to be honest, there is a higher power at work, but it is attributeless, and you need to call it God so the concept doesn't forget. And what is God? You know, people make fun of God, but what is it? What is the point of that concept? We're not just gazing through a scientific lens. Not everything can be understood under a microscope or a telescope. I am saying that sometimes the story of life requires an answer that is a more brighter story. And so for many, let's say, nihilistic bound beings, religion was a beacon in the dark where they had something to live for. And forget the extremeness. Nobody is extreme 24/7. Do you see what I mean? And let me tell you, religious fundamentalism, it's in the name. It's fundamental. It is behavior that has not been uh, uh, observed and contemplated. And so that is a disservice to humanity if you don't look at it right. Because to look at the world right means to prosper. And so what does prosperity mean? Does it mean that the fear of overpopulation and the greed of hasty hands is going to lead to an early apocalypse? No. It means that your task as a living creature is to acknowledge the world to the best of your ability and contribute an efficient vision or concept of value. So for me, it has been only through an authentic search where my creativity has shown patterns of behavior that were uncommon. Do you see? So what I mean by that is I know at what speed I think, but there's certain moments where I just in my mind, as if like, you know, subtitles in a movie, imagine an endless sentence begins to be written and I'm just witnessing like just aspects, just concepts are in some sense already in the field of intelligence where I am an expression trying to communicate in. So in the trust of the natural world, as Lao Tzu perhaps would like the youth to listen to, is that, oh dear children of the world, for those who will close their eyes on this planet and for those who will open it for the first time, life is an empty page where we require as a species to give our greatest performance before non-existence arrives. That's what Mr. Within wants to see. You know, the emptiness in the background will not let us forget that the stage is ours before the final curtain is pulled. So creativity has to do with also a certain rush you get from realizing you're a mortal creature. Whenever I realize throughout the day I'm a mortal creature, I get a sense of speed that's important. As if I feel I have to rush to contribute as much as I can before the energetic output is not requires to rest. So for me, it's very fascinating. I have a I have and some I can relate to my phone when I've recorded many of these Mr. Within talks on, where it goes on for as long as the battery can hold and then it ends. For me, the way I'm living is not to test if divinity is here or not, if there is an intelligence beyond our eyes functioning here. For me, I have understood that in what the ancient Vedic seers would say the lila, the play of the world, and the word play is the best word they could use for like an actual play, like a theatrical play, because in some sense life is an action in a world where you are deciding what value you can have in it and what value the world has. I tried saving the world, and then I realized the world was trying to save me. I asked the world, why are you trying to save me? And an echo from the edge of my mind, from a timeless space, began reaching. reaching me, as if like, imagine like an abstract, you know, warrior. Like imagine a Jedi, but let me say it like this: imagine a sword made of light as white as starlight, just instantly finding your hand from light years away. It's just coming to you instantly. So for example, it felt like that I kind of paid attention to something so much. It was as if like I had sniper concentration. And so I was just like concentrating so much on this idea that the idea had to crack to exist in my memory. Because what we don't realize is memory works like a kind of circular stream, whereas if there is a certain orbital access to thoughts, where it's very fascinating that sometimes I've forgotten something and I just tell the person, I'm like, hold on a second, and then it just orbits and comes back. Do you see? And it has to do with how sensitive one is to their brain. Sorry, not to their brain, to their breathing. So in some sense, sometimes when I give these Mr. Within talks, I'm fully conscious of my breathing, the breath that's going on. So I don't have a problem with, in some sense, the natural way the body can apply itself as thoughts emerge in the mind of a creature who seems to produce a brain chemistry that functions in a way that everything is collectively kept in one instant of intelligence, an instant unspeakable, because what we speak of is kept in a dualistic realm. And where does non-duality stand? Do you know how savage it was? The concept of religion, people think it's now so nice and gentle, and people on the streets are making people religious with their stands, like religious booths and stuff. Let me tell you, no. Religion was a chaotic idea. It was an idea where it said the universe was claimed by a truth beyond our eyes. And so this was a savage cry in the minds of many people who suddenly religion denied their desires. And so they had to respect, in some sense, the command of an ancient revelation, or they had to live a life where their morality was not an access to them. They had to either hide from their morality, escape their morality, or realize that to avoid responsibility is just to avoid looking and seeing what happens next. Creativity occurs within some sense you being completely alone and just going to like I'm in Canada right now, so we have Staples, going and buying like a pack of printer paper, getting a pen, and put that pen on that printer paper and put this on a table where you're often at, or wherever in your house. And whenever ideas come down to you, write them on this paper. Right? Don't give him a context yet. First, write the concept, and then as you study what you have written, the context naturally develops, because the mind tries to contain meaning, and the meaning is being contained by the first premise, and in some sense the first persona and the first identity. Who you really think you are at some level of your intelligence is an image of yourself. This image of yourself is malleable to your intentions, because free will is a permission to be the god of our own thoughts. It's like you're allowed to think of anything, you know. And some people, some atheists shout, and they're like, religion is thought police, you know, we don't need that, you know. But let me tell you, it's just a design. For a designer, there is no hate or love. There is just expression. And to some, it will be like, what are you? A lifeless creature, a lifeless witness of form and never formed? I will tell you no. I have finally understood what I read when I was young, and somebody said the mind is the greatest trickster. And now I realize why. Because it can make you live in an image and miss out on a reality that is no longer based to be real by the past or the future, but by the direct experience the present is being. This is the proof of your divinity, that you exist now, that your eyes are open now. I met God when my eyes opened, evidently. God for me has been a conscience that somehow lived to honor a certain decency of its own nature before it crumbled like the leaves in autumn at the end of its life. For me, I have died in my dreams, and it was shocking that morning I woke up. It was as if dying and waking up the next day and realizing that the mind simulates reality when you're asleep, and there's something in you that watches that reality, remembers it, as if very playfully behind your eyes there's a realm of structure and form, and language is the commander of that army, and your attention is the lord of that that all those commanders respond to. Your attention is the secret of life, but you're so lost in trying to pay attention to different things that the cost of the concept of enlightenment is not worth the search. Marketing could do a disservice to mankind if it hides truth too much. Creativity is your ability to be a new self by trying a new method. There were polymaths back in the day. Da Vinci was one of them. Plato, Socrates, all these what we call philosophers. Omar Khayyam, this dude created a fucking, sorry for my language, but this dude created a calendar. This dude created a calendar, many mathematical systems, and he also wrote ancient mystical poetry. It was like he would do multiple things. Da Vinci, his left hand would, I believe his left hand would draw and his right hand would write or something like that. But that man could draw and write at the same time, and at the same time be in another different room in his mind altogether while all those actions were taking place. So this is what they call polymaths, right? It is an intelligence that is capable of applying the same pattern of its authentic natural intuition into many different levels. So what that means is, it's like some like this. This could have certain comedic value, but what I'm saying is, some guest went to the host's house, to the house of his friend who invited him, and he went empty-handed. And that man said, "Where's my gift? You usually come with the gift, when you come to a person's house." And that man said, "My gift is my presence." And so some people will be like, "That's so corny, this guy's cheap." But I'll tell you, like, no, what it means is that I have come as an authentic soul, as a living being who does not deny itself reality because it is limited. Who defined the word limitation? That dude was limited in the first place. That's why he was creating the word. So what I'm telling you is that the word limitless seems more interesting because it is suggesting that your knowledge, it's like its roots are the unknown infinitude of the realm of exploration. Creativity is your responsibility to explore your greatest idea and share it with the world. What else could it be? Much blessings and namaste.